Okay, we made it. So, would you mind repeating that point that you were making? You made two really good points. I think I want to start the discussion there. That's really good. One was don't universalize or despise, and also the different levels of analysis. So, if you would mind, just kick off the discussion with that.
Yeah, sure. I'll try to reiterate what I said off recording, which is people are often tempted to no. People are often tempted here to look at the characters and make broad statements like this character is bad, this character is good, and end of discussion. And they stop analyzing and stop thinking about the characters, which is one thing. And the other thing is if people reject or love them too much, they have exaggerated or exacerbated feelings for these characters in a slanted way. I'd say that's not a very good sign regarding to where their mindset or psyche is at. For instance, if a person is extremely a fanboy or a fangirl of Aphrodite, that might mean that they are too addicted to sex. They might be an nymphomaniac in a sense, or at least they have that tendency underneath.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, that's exactly right. And the pantheon and all of the characters on this stage, they're telling you where you are psychologically, right? Oh, I'm over here. I've got eyes everywhere, 100 eyes, and I'm anxious and trying to control things, right? They're telling you where you are psychologically. And what you're saying is correct. It's the main point. You don't universalize any of these things and you don't despise them. We should be, this is a new principle we can develop here right now. As we do the course, we'll develop new principles. Categorizational principle. It's an anti-categorizational principle. These are characters. They're peers of yours. You have to relate to them. They're not to be put into boxes, the good guy box and the bad guy box. So that's the first point, and I think that's completely correct. And also what you said there about the psychological thing, it's like, yeah, you're trying to organize your world properly. Your world maps on the real world. Oh, I talked about, I was talking about something that I never finished. I was talking about objects and not seeing them, but seeing them as, obstacles or tools to get to where you're going. And I forgot the point of that was this. It's like, here's the proof that that's the case, that you don't see objects, you see tools and obstacles instead, and then you infer that it's an object, is that when you look at a bottle like this, your hand gets ready to grip it. So your brain, which is your body, which is dispersed throughout your body, it's mapping the world onto it. Okay, you're making a model of the world, and to you, this thing is the thing that fits like this. And there you go. Like, so my hand is doing this before I even notice because I see it as something to pick up or to throw. So the reason for all of that I forgot about when I got into it, because I got into that other thing, was the mythopoetic idea is that it's relational knowledge, which means knowledge of the world is knowledge of the self, and knowledge of the self is knowledge of the world. So to understand the proper arrangement of these deities and the story they go through to be arranged properly is to understand how to organize your psychology properly. It's not only that, it's true on that level as well as every other level, right? So we're not saying this is just reducible to, it's a story about your psychology. We're saying it's a story about everything, and your psychology is a part of everything. And so it's obviously mirrored in that psychology. How else is it possible that we had brilliant dreamers who could see these things, who could see these personalities and how they relate, and then give us the poetry to understand the dream accurately? They were just better dreamers than we.
I have an idea of why.
And so,
guys, like,
why else?
I have an
why
idea.
wouldn't it be in our minds? You're on mute if you're trying to talk.
Can you hear me now?
Tell me.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, awesome. I have an idea. Just like the Ionians developed refined philosophies due to their traveling and engaging with many cultures and philosophical traditions and religions. People like Ovid also become quite knowledgeable of human nature and aspects of psyche that he may render them as characters on his scrolls. Might be due to him knowing very different characters, very different personalities, engaging in with very intense people that are exaggerated in terms of Zeus or Hermes, or Aphrodite, etc., etc. So as to give him this intuition over time, over being exposed to these kind of data. His brain will start crunching this data over time, and we might say that this is attributed mostly to divine inspiration. Who knows, maybe, but it might play also the data gathering of real life experiences might also play a big part in this, because I have some idea of Ovid's biography, of how he interacted with the emperor's daughter, who was quite Aphrodite, as I understood. She liked to indulge in sexual activity and whatnot. And the emperor was not too pleased that Ovid would draw more of this from her, basically, with his poetry. And so I think these kinds of livelihoods and life experiences also play a part in a person like Ovid being able to represent these characters so nicely.
Certainly, it would have to be that way. Now, I want to flesh that out a bit, because it's two different tracks on a railroad, and you need both of them to run the train. We all have just as many experiences as Ovid. Ovid couldn't have done what he did without the experiences, but he's also a geniusly plugged into seeing what he needs to see. In other words, you could imagine a bell curve of pattern recognition, and some people are 3 standard deviations above the mean, right? So he just happens to be a genius pattern recognizer, maybe. And that's a kind of divine inspiration in a sense, because, he didn't choose how to be born and how to be constructed. Then the second thing is, well, what is he in tune with and what is he recognizing? His patterns of his life are telling him about something, but he's also in tune with this artistic realm, right? So that's the dream realm. So he's a better dreamer than other people. Okay. But where does his dreams come from? He doesn't make up his dreams. Nature evolved creatures like us to dream about dragons, and 7-year-olds in every culture around the world dream about dragons. Anthropologists have shown that even in cultures where there are no official stories about dragons, they all dream of these types of creatures. So he's in tune with a world that presents itself in image form when we're dreaming. We're not as good at dreaming. I could write a novel, nobody should read it. But Salman Rushdie writes a novel, you should read it. Well, it's analogous to that. We're all dreaming, but Ovid's dreaming really well, and he's seeing it so clearly that he can then put it in an artistic form where we can participate in his dream and say, oh, this character's acting this way and speaking that way with this character, and here's how they're relating. So in more than one way, it is divine inspiration. It's divine because the cosmos selected away disadvantageous variety to produce the evolution of a thing that was really in line with what it was. And the closest thing we have right now is that we know of is humanity. And the best of the humans are these inspired, genius, revelatory poets, the foundational religious characters who say, this is what being is really like. Well, what's it like? Well, I'm not going to give you propositions. I'm going to tell you who they're like. They're like these personalities because that's the way they are. And that nature evolved personalities. If we have personalities and we fit in best with the universe, why not start with the idea that the universe is composed of personalities, figure out what they look like, how they act, and tell it to us in a story so that we can know the world we live in. So it's divinely inspired because he didn't make himself a genius. He came out as the product of difficult 200,000 years of people dying and warring and having these impressional structures sewn into our subconscious much longer than 250,000 years. Lizards dream, for God's sake. So it goes back so far that subconscious dream images are sewn into what we are. The genius emerges, happens to just be in tune with the muses better, but it's the cosmos that's creating us in its image. And so that's where the dream figures are coming from. He didn't make them up. He had a brain that made them up that was below his conscious level, and he got in tune with it properly, right? So yeah, the simple way of saying a thing that would take me hours to talk about is it's divine inspiration. It's the universe as a whole speaking to us through us. That's the straightforward way of saying it. And so you could just say it that way, and you wouldn't have to waste forever, like I was about to do, trying to explain how, from a materialist perspective, you could understand that it's not, the materialist perspective is not correct, but you could be a naturalist who believes there's nothing but nature, so long as you recognize that nature is pretty super. Now you're on mute again, so unmute yourself.
Yeah, but drawing, for instance, from Buddhism, they are not absolutist materialists, but they kind of explain what I was trying to attempt to explain, just by their principle, the hierarchy of pratika samupada, a codependent generation. Things influence other things, and multiple things influence each other and synergistically interact to form something that is either emergent or more than the sum of the parts. And when we have our human brains, which are the most complex objects that we know of for now in the universe, and they can kind of process all this data, all this information, and who knows what more is happening in terms of epiphenomena. That epiphenomena, because of the, we have so many unanswered questions in philosophy of mind and neurophysiology. We have absolutely no idea what's going on. If the brain is more like a radio receiver and it's receiving a signal from the cosmos, it would fit nicely with what you just proposed. Or if it's a kind of a generator of mind, or maybe both even, who knows? So it could be both.
What's that phrase you just used? That codependent generation, the Buddhism phrase, what is that?
Yeah, in Sanskrit it is pratika samupada. I can write it in the private chat.
Did I get it right? I probably didn't spell it right. Oh, it's not letting me add this. Oh, because I'm in comments. Okay. Codependent generation. I put it in the wrong place. Hold on.
Yeah, in Pali,
there it is. Okay.
In the Pali language, which is the oldest language of
Pratika.
Buddhism, it's Patika Samupada. And in Sanskrit, it is Sanskrit, which is a later language. It is Pratya Samupada.
Okay, so this idea I didn't know. That's what I was trying to get at when I was talking about the development is codependent, right? It's this codependent development. It's the yin and the yang chasing each other. That's a brilliant, brilliant idea. We should have you give us a mini lecture on that.
I think I should mention to you that we finished our first segment of history of philosophy of ancient Greece up to Aristotle and Plato and their respective immediate students like Theophrastus and Strabo and whatnot. And now we are going to start the history of Indian philosophy, and it includes Jainism, Buddhism, Brahmanism, Vedantism, etc., etc. Even materialistic schools of philosophy of ancient India, duking it out against each other. It's much more appropriate to compare the history of philosophy of India with the history of philosophy, not of ancient Greece, but of the entire European continent. It's that wide in breadth. But yeah, I think we should discuss these metaphysical concepts, ontological concepts of Buddhism, maybe.
Can I join in that class? When are you doing it? Because I told you before, I know nothing. I know there's a lot to know. That's basically all I know about Indian philosophy. I just got a bunch of the sutras and everything, but
Yeah,
I know none of it.
you can
So how do I
join.
join?
You can join it, and you can join it by being a participant only, or you can even participate and also have the video stream to your YouTube channel as well.
You
So
can stream it to my channel as well
yeah,
as your channel?
exactly. Normally, who is hosting the StreamYard during these sessions
Oh,
that
wow.
that occur? Yeah, exactly.
Interesting.
It allows for that because, well, we just need the person hosting the session on StreamYard to have a paid version of StreamYard, just like you do have, and it allows for that. And yeah, I honestly encourage you to participate in these sessions,
That's
even if
interesting. I
you.
didn't know that. I might make a playlist of me joining as a student in another class, and I'll put that on my channel as a different playlist because it'll clearly complement what we're doing over here. So
Yeah.
I didn't know that was an option. So yeah, let me know when are you guys doing those?
Yeah, so the sessions are always on Saturdays or Sundays or both, depending on our availability, at 1 p.m. GMT plus one, which is London Lisbon time. But your time will probably be early morning. Our colleague from New York,
So it's 8
he
a.m. my time. Okay, good.
yeah, he joins early, he joins in these mornings. So yeah, it's Central time.
All
It's
right.
it's it's 8 a.m.
How do
Okay.
I find out about it? Is it on the Discord? I think you sent me a Discord.
It's on the Discord, yes. So
Okay. I'm gonna
I'll
I'm gonna start doing that. That's just keep me in touch. Like when it happens, help me to figure out
I'll
the
I'll
schedule by just
I'll, I'll add you right now in my Discord server
okay.
with where we have the channel for planning of these sessions, and I'll say Zara has manifested interest in participating in these study group sessions. They're
Okay.
literally study group sessions.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
just try to embellish them more because I bring slides usually. I study the material during the week and make slides to fit more or
So
less what the historian of philosophy what he has said in his podcast, which he's called Peter Adamson. He has been doing a massive history of philosophy
yes, I
project,
know. Yeah, yeah.
and yeah, so we
Fantastic.
we tread on his footsteps from Thales
Well, he
to
gave a great outline, so you can
yeah
dig in deeper
yeah
with
yeah
each of his. That's brilliant. That's
yeah
brilliant.
yeah yeah
I thought of
we
doing that many years ago. That's very brilliant.
yeah so yeah I think it's you're very welcome, very much welcome to join.
Because one of the differences between your content and I'm not slagging that off. I think it was great. I used to listen to the podcast if it's the same one I'm thinking of, is that there's a lot of encyclopedia of philosophy stuff available on the internet, but the deeper dive, you can't do that unless you're having a discussion. So
Yeah,
it's let's wrestle with it together. Let's have a conversation and bring up things. That's the only way to really do it. You can't just do it like the AI can word think an algorithm with an encyclopedic knowledge. But what's great about all those encyclopedic things is you can use any of them and say, okay, let's not miss anything. Let's go and study the next chapter of this, but do it deeper. And that content needs to be created. So that's what we're doing. That's what you're doing. I want to join. The other reason I smiled is that you're going to get to see a different side of me, the side of the guy that has a lot of questions and can't wait to ask them gently and just I'm writing things down and learning. Because here I'm like really doing most of the talking in the lecture.
yeah, you need to come out of your comfort zone so you will
Oh, I'm
have more
comfortable.
questions.
Well,
You're
yeah,
comfortable coming
I'm
out.
comfortable asking questions and then just listening for a long time. I can be quieter, but here
Yeah,
I'm
yeah, yeah.
doing so you'll get to see another side of me. That'll be great.
Yeah, I imagine that you'll make really nice questions to create nice conversation and discussion dynamics, and as well, I think you will have some really interesting points to make as well, because
Well, it'll be fun.
you will see
I
points
know
made
none of it.
you'll see points made by these different schools of philosophy that we are all pretty much starting studying.
Yeah.
We
That's
are
how we
we are
study.
we are pretty much noobs at Indian philosophy compared to Western philosophy. and so it will be really, really interesting. And I think we will have some surprises, like finding Indian atomists, Indian materialists,
Sure. Oh, sure, sure.
Indian guys that went kind of unorthodox, because there was such a big status quo of established orthodoxy, and go against things. And then there will be also a lot of syncretism as well. The Indians
It's
syncretized
going to be
much
amazing.
more than us Europeans. So they ended up with many developments that are aggregates of stuff, instead of kind of annihilating or suppressing schools so much as Europeans. In that sense,
Okay.
they were better philosophers. They were more successful at philosophy in that sense. So
It
I
might
think it
have,
will be
yeah,
really interesting.
there might be virtues there
Yeah.
that give things you don't get otherwise. Look, I know none of it, and I can't wait. Like this is going to be. I'm going to be eating it up. This is going to be really, really exciting. So good. All right. There was another point you made before we went live again with this, which was I wrote it down. Let me what I wrote down. Oh, so as we're doing this, if a level of analysis suggests itself to me, I take the meaning of the story and I talk about that. But it might be interesting if we were to take a set of like human psychology, physical reality, the relationship between government and citizenship, what men and women, it's masculine and feminine depicted, but it's clearly true of men and women. I don't know if we said that since we went live again, but we were talking about that earlier, which is like the stories mean the same thing on all these levels. And it might be good to just keep that in mind and make sure that we when we get to the meaning of the story, we just circle back and try to apply it to a few. But then that other point you made was, okay, it was exactly the point I've been trying to get to and get through in this course, which is mythopoetic is relational knowledge. It's I know the world the way Adam knew his wife. That's the way I want to know it, kind of thing. And so it's knowledge of the world is knowledge of the self and vice versa. But it's also, these are characters. You don't, what I wrote down about your principle is an anti-categorizational attitude. Again, I can't remember if we talked about it again since we went live, but you don't despise the character for their badnesses, and you don't universalize them and say their badnesses are actually goodnesses. You just get to know them as a character that is actually in the world. The point of the story is to meet Hamlet, meet King Lear. These are ways of being in the world, and you need to be aware of it because they're not going to go away if you're not aware of them. And the other thing you said, I didn't say this before, but that is suggested by what you're saying, is that, why do you want to get to know them? Well, they need to be in their proper place. And like you said, that means psychologically you need to be organized properly because you have a little bit of each of these, and the relationships have to be right. But also, they evolve and you evolve through the relationship. So as you get to know them better, sometimes you want to know them in their badness so that you can make the right sacrifices, make the right propitiations, navigate the world properly so that they don't manifest their badness in your life, right? The story is telling you, if you're using the Apollonian principle while trying to find a mate, that ends badly for you and you torture other people while doing it. Okay, right? If you're using this Zeus lustfulness and dishonesty and breaking of trust and delusion, then you torture others and everything gets worse. So understand that that's not the right, just because you feel like you love and you want what you love doesn't mean you have a right to go be dishonest about it and use trickery to try to get there, right? So you're not saying bad guy, I don't like him, good guy, he's the one I serve. It's, who are these characters? Because those are the only ways of being in the world. And so don't use this here, don't use that there, be like this in this situation. Understand who's above you and who's above Zeus and Cupid and all of that. Anyway, we've been talking about it a lot, but
I would even complement what you said about an anti-categorization attitude. I would even say that maybe it's more like an anti-discriminatory way of thinking. You don't want to discriminate them. You don't want to put something or some attributes down. you want to really classify them as accurately as possible. You want to look at these characters and have a kind of an Aristotelian attitude of looking at what makes them tick, what is piecing them up, get kind of grokking what's going on, and what kind of attribute elements are in play there. If you figure out that, you might figure out ways to get more of what you want out of your relationships with people and out of other people, get more of the positives and minimize the negatives, or even avoid negatives entirely. There's this adage of a person being so enlightened or so illuminated or so wise that they pull out the best in each other, in other people, and other people who otherwise might be kind of mischievous or have some maliciousness. They will actually feel soft-hearted and warm-hearted by the interaction with these wise individuals. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So how do you get to know your family members, your community members? Well, you could try to dominate them, or you could try to be a sycophantic slave to them, or you could relate to them, right? You could negotiate with them and get to know them. So I wrote these down while you were talking. Ways to relate to the character. Be aware that they exist, accept the fact that they exist, and join their family. Become familiar with them. It's a familiarity approach. The wrong ways to treat these characters is despising them, ignoring them, trying to pretend they're not there, trying to abolish them. If they're immortal, they can't be abolished, so you have to integrate with them because you're not going to do that. Or likewise, you shouldn't universalize them or use them to excuse what you're doing because they're doing it. No, if they come to a bad end, then learn the lesson. Don't say, oh, well, Zeus did it too, so it's okay for me to do it. No, it was bad for him to do it. It was bad to him and to the ones around him. So don't use it to justify. Don't try to excuse away what they are. Don't try to pretend there's something different than they are. And don't try to universalize them as the only principle. It's as simple as become a member of the family. Ovid is inviting you to meet your family members on planet Earth and learn how to have a good relationship with each of them. They're all very quirky and very different. And some of them are great at something and bad at something else. So get to know who they are. Make jokes with them. Play with them. Sacrifice, propitiate, navigate. But these are who you live amongst, whether you like it or not. So first become aware of who they are. Anyway, that's the idea.
That's a really nice way to close your point with the idea of playfulness. Instead of
wrestle.
Wrestle playfully, cheerfully, instead of resenting them, instead of censoring them, instead of sweeping them under the rug and pretending they don't exist.
They're not going away. They're not going away. They're still there. You're not going to have a good time, but they're still there.
Yeah, exactly. If you kind of pretend they don't exist, they'll come back even stronger, and you'll pay the price.
You can't navigate being. This is being. This is Ovid saying this is what the world is constituted of. You can't navigate that without navigating it. You can't pretend it isn't there and, I'm going to pretend the world's different. It's not. This is what the world is like. You want to get from point A to point B. This is who you are and what you're traveling in. And this is the medium through which you're traveling. You wrote anti-discriminatory way of thinking. Classify them in terms of So, you look at their attributes to get to know them. It's like if you and I lived in a dormitory with like 16 other people or something, right? These are people. You need to know who they are. You get to know them. Hey, let me introduce you to this guy. He's kind of quirky. Or this guy over here, don't get on his bad side. He's really touchy if you steal his food or something, right? Like they have character traits. You're not saying, oh, this one's the universal principle. You're not saying, oh, this one is totally bad and wrong. You're saying, hey, this is what they're good for. This is what they're not good for. And then you get to learn what you're good for and what you're not good for. And so you might decide, oh, I I mostly worship this deity. He's kind of like the temple of Apollo. Let's worship that, or let's worship this. But you recognize where they relate to the other ones as well. So I think this happens in India, from what I've heard, is that the polytheism will have pockets of, we're the ones who worship Shiva, we're the ones who worship Gopala, the different manifestations of the deities. But we understand that, that's what we're paying honor to, but it exists in a milieu of other facets of the same deity.
But
Or
you
other
look at the
gods.
deities like Indra's wisdom, and Agni's kind of fieriness. He's very fiery. And then Yama is also very severe, and the death, Yama is death, very severe and very serious about everything. But he also is able to dispense wisdom if we show resoluteness and we are decided to gain wisdom from death. Death dispenses wisdom as well. If we kind of pay the sacrifice of rejecting worldly vices. That's what the Katha Upanishad
mysteries too.
That's what the Katha Upanishad tells us. If the Katha Upanishad puts us in the point of view of a Brahmanic child who sees his father sacrificing everything he has to propitiate Yama, because he has not been a good man. He's trying to pay his way into the favor of the gods, but he only has sick and elderly cows, and he has nothing of value, so he's only giving crap to the gods. And the kid points that out. That so you're just giving bad possessions to the god, and I'm also your possession, right? To whom will you give me? And he had to insist and ask 3 times to his father, and his father was a very intemperate man, easily to anger, and he said, "I will give you to death." And the kid took that as a hint, and the kid walked by himself to the temple of Yama, and there he stood for 3 days without any food. And when the god returned to his abode, the kid had a chance to ask him three gifts, 3 boons, because to retribute of this absence of having a Brahman without any hospitality for 3 days. And then the kid asks the god for his relationship with his father to improve. And the second one is how to do sacrifices properly, since his father was sacrificing miserably. And the third one is what happens to human beings after death. And this third one, the god was really expressed reluctance to concede, and it was making several counter proposals of worldly pleasures and worldly luxuries. You can have an entire empire. You can have kids.
How about this?
You can have a long life, very long life. And the kid rejected all of that because he was perfectly aware that these things are ephemeral. They are ephemeral.
But those are the things that people allow themselves to be distracted by so that they don't have to think about that question, right? Those are the things people chase so that they can pretend that that's not the question they need an answer to.
They don't face death.
So what happens? To continue the story.
Yeah, and then since the kid insists, the god is rather pleased that the kid passed his test, basically. And so what was really his test? Because he really was kind of excited, because not even his peer gods, as he mentions, disturb him with these questions. Not even them know, because they have never asked. They've never had this philosophical curiosity. So the kid is really high above in his esteem.
So when you said the god was hesitant to tell him, I thought, okay, when you first hear that, you might think because it's so terrible that you don't want to know or something. But I thought there's other reasons too. There's other reasons not to give away this wisdom. First of all, you give it to the wrong person, the person who's still distractible by those other things, and who knows if being can continue if you give that kind of knowledge to the wrong person, right? It's like the ignorance is necessary for those that aren't in his position where he says, no, I don't want those things. I really want this. It's sort of like the test isn't just to play with the guy. It's because that's the proper test you have to pass to get this. It occurs to me that in the Hindu temples, there's a lot of sexual reliefs of orgies and sexual imagery around the outside. And I heard
on some, I think, not all. Yeah, it depends on the place or culture.
Well, this might be wrong, but I heard Peterson suggest that the point of the statues is to say, if you can't get past the statues, it's not yet time to enter. Right. So right. Yeah. It's like, so this is here to say, well, if that's where you are in life, then go and be concerned with that. And when it's time for you to, that's appropriate for you to come in to know these other things. And it reminded me also of what you were saying, reminded me of the Eleusinian mysteries, because it's like, well, it might be too terrible to know, but it might actually be knowing this, knowing, how did Hancock put it once? He said he had an ayahuasca trip where for decades ayahuasca was telling him he needs to give up his bad habit of marijuana, that it wasn't serving him and he wasn't in right relationship with it. And he kept not giving it up. And then one day he had an ayahuasca trip where Mother Ayahuasca, this is how he describes it, took him to the place, the Egyptian afterlife, where our souls are weighed in the presence of the gods on the scale against the feather of truth and justice. Right. It's very much the Socratic idea that, like, all right, your soul, you have time to organize your soul properly. But when you're dead, whatever soul you have, that determines the destiny of how you relate to the cosmic forces afterwards, with you end up in a good or a bad place and navigate that environment well, or if it's bad for you. Right. Anyway, so he tells that story and it's like, okay, that's sort of the Eleusinian mysteries that we don't know what they are. They're mysteries and they were kept secret, but they were clearly about what happens to you after death. And it's been suggested that it was through the use of the sacraments, which was, Alcibiades was tried and I think executed, being he and his friends profaned the sacraments, which means instead of one day a year, we all come together as a culture and we take these hallucinogenic drugs. You were breaking into the temple and using them for fun. You and your friends were using these drugs as if they were recreational, and that might have been what the profaning of the sacraments meant. But in any case, some people who talk about having been initiated through the Eleusinian rites say, well, that's where you get rid of your fear of death. You now understand what this whole thing is about and what you need to do in life. And so you're no longer afraid of death. So it seemed to be connected with that. And anyway, that popped into my mind. So I want you to continue saying anything else you want to say there. And then I have a couple questions for you. And then I have maybe one or two in a non-recorded post show I want to ask you about. So yeah, we should probably wrap it up within an hour, I would say. So did you get to say what you were saying there? That's how I felt like responding, but did I cut you off?
Sure. I'm just going through the slides that I made with this Upanishad, specific Upanishad in mind, which rather is part of the Vedic texts that come from the first age of philosophy in India. That equates more or less to the Ionian age, to the age of Thales and friends, basically.
Pre-Socratics.
Yeah, basically this says, I really don't.
We shouldn't call them. I know.
I really don't use that expression because these guys are the guys that if they hadn't started this, nothing of such merit would exist. Basically,
I wish Tweedafund was here. That's Tweedafund's perspective. Is look, it was all happening. It was all happening before Socrates, and everything got messy after that. But this is where it's really at. And it's
like the others are post-Ionian after kind of like Anaxagoras. If you pick on Anaxagoras and the Sophists, these are all post-Ionians. They are a product of the Ionian tradition. So the very fact that we had Sophists came from the Ionian guys, and they flocked to Athens because they spoke so smart and could do so many lectures on rhetoric. there were so many people interested in purchasing their tutorage in Athens. So
that's the reason I put it in quotes, the pre-Socratic, because that's how I think about it. So I did it like that because we both know Tweetafon. Hopefully he'll be in these spaces, we'll be in his, and we'll see more of him in later videos and stuff. But his perspective, which clearly has a lot of wisdom and truth to it, is like, look, it was all happening pre-Socratic. So, yeah, like you said, call that post-Ionian, because this is where it's really happening. But the reason why he said that is because that's not, my perspective. I really value Socrates as like, I introduce it to people through that other lens. But the point is, it doesn't matter. These are lenses for approaching it to try to get to the wisdom. And it's not like you join my way of looking at it. Don't, please. It's not.
In my mind,
supposed to be joined.
Socrates is the culmination of so many things that went right. That made Socrates a possibility, or maybe even a necessity.
In our Christian world, there's a lot of people who rightly identify Plato as a pain in the ass because he made Christianity everywhere. And so and I'm not disagreeing. I'm saying I understand what's motivating people who want to say, look, can we stop emphasizing Plato so much and go, there's a good reason to do that. And there's a lot of great wisdom you can get out of that. The point of these lenses is you're not supposed to adopt any of them. You adopt them in order to get to the truth, to get to the wisdom, to get to what's in the text, and they're useful ways of getting there. But anyway, sorry, go ahead.
If you have time, I have 3 slides here with a painting of Hercules.
Okay, please.
I think it's worthwhile.
Good. I want you to do that. Share. So this is what I was going to ask: is what else popped into your mind while we were doing this? And so you're basically answering the first of the 3 questions I wanted to ask you. So go ahead and share that, and let's go through this, and then I want to ask you the next question.
This will be rather quick, but I think it will be worthwhile. So it's uploading and processing.
Good. I have it here. Add to stream.
Yeah, there it is. Okay. So Socrates in the middle.
Good. Yeah.
The Choice of Hercules by Carracci. I think he's from Italy, like your ancestors too. 16th century. Hercules weighing between vice, Cacia, who's to our right and to his left, and virtue, Arete, who is to our left and to his right. You can see, and I kind of examined this painting, and I added these labels.
Whole movie, yeah.
There's a lot going there.
It's amazing. I said this to my friend the other day, the one we're putting the con law class together on. I said, I can't believe how this approach has turned these paintings. Some of them are like movies. I could stare at them for 3 hours, and you just look from one part to another. And this has never been my experience before. But by using this approach that we're teaching and modeling and trying to use to understand the text, you can stare at a painting like this for about 3 hours and still get new things spoken to you about it.
Yeah.
And it's amazing how an artist could do something like that. So yeah, they're like movies at this point. So go ahead.
Yeah. So let's start to the right, our right, with Cacia, because she is the one that's
sexy.
Yeah, she is the one that Hercules considered firstly in the story.
The eyes should be drawn that way, right? You would expect it to be.
Yeah.
And he's sort of listening to her with his ear cocked up, but he's kind of like, I don't want to stop looking this way. You see how his face is sort of like,
exactly.
Right, fine. You know what I mean? So go ahead. It's right there. It's the artist depicted it that way. All right, go ahead.
Basically, the thirst traps that people talk about on Instagram, literally. She is going over the top to expose her body and to get his attention. She's doing everything, probably even masking her face with makeup and whatnot. Also, she has a treasure trove, so to speak, of worldly pleasures, theater masks, lyrical poetry, a musical instrument. Of course, forgive the artists for representing the box of what seems like a guitar or a violin, because it's not a lyre, as would be in ancient Greece.
Sure.
And playing cards, They, if I would be the technical advisor of the artist, I would tell him to put the dice made of knuckles of I think it was goats or whatnot, or rams or whatnot. But we have playing cards right at the lower right edge of the
Oh, I see
of the
that. Yeah,
thing.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Well, putting the guitar in, that's one of the ways, maybe a basic way, but one of the ways of updating the myth so that it's meaningful in the
yeah,
time. What we might do is put Dungeon and Dragon dice on
yeah, yeah,
there or
yeah, yeah, yeah.
something. Okay, go ahead. Keep going.
And game console,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
you
yeah.
know, gamepads
Absolutely. The video
and
game. Yeah.
and OnlyFans and whatnot, and the book on top next to the masks. It seems like lyrical poetry to me.
I think that
Um,
could be, yeah.
I think it could be the idea, which is the lyrical poetry that Xenophon and Plato argued were bad influences. Maybe even some of the poetry that Xenophanes was also criticizing because it depicted gods in a wrong way. And we also have Dionysian grapes there, so alluding to the going into excesses of the Dionysian lifestyle. Not to say that it isn't a good thing to symposiums once in a while, but every single day, like some characters of the symposium of Plato, were there after a previous symposium in the night before. They weren't yet even recovering from the previous night, while Socrates was there fresh. And Socrates would do this symposium because it was very important for his friend Agathon, but he wouldn't do it like a lifestyle, like every single day, like regularly. It was a ceremonial thing for Socrates. And then to our left, we have Arete, the goddess of virtue or excellence. If we use the Aristotelian interpretation of the word arete, it's excellence. And then a guy with a book there that looks to me like Homer. And he might be waiting for Hercules to start doing epic stuff, to start writing it down. Doesn't it
Sure.
seem like?
Sure,
It
that's
seems like
interesting.
he's kind of waiting.
Well,
And
there's legacy. You sing about heroes, right? So there's
yeah,
this path of deification. There's this like
apotheosis,
right.
man.
So the path is difficult and it
Yeah,
requires discipline and it's hard work, but there's rewards over there that are different than the immediate pleasure rewards over on the other side. They're balanced out. That's okay. Keep
yeah.
going. That's
And
brilliant.
of course, she's pointing very clearly at the rewards above the rough roads, but she's not sugarcoating it.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
If you go here, I'm I know who I am. She's saying I am what I am. I am this beauty. I'm not sugarcoating anything that I am. I'm a modest beauty. I'm modestly dressed. But what you see is what you got. And if you go, and I
Well,
don't know
you've
what
got it if you go. If you've got it
yeah,
if you go. Like in other words, there's a lot of work to climb the mountain, and there's a lot of undressing to be done. You know what I'm
yeah,
saying? Like there's things to accomplish on that road that aren't just immediately given to you.
you're
Whereas
gonna suffer. You're gonna suffer.
Kakia is just immediately giving to you everything. It's like
Yeah,
right here. It's fun. Just hang out and don't get stronger. Don't develop. Don't do any of those things. Just sit here and jerk off.
yeah, exactly, precisely. It's just here is endorphins, free endorphins, bask in the endorphins, and you will not develop the self-discipline of associating dopamine with the right things. Basically, when you get a dopamine hit and you have
Yep.
associated the dopamine hit with working out, learning some new stuff, having lively discussions,
That's yeah.
engaging with complex material. When you associate dopamine with that and not with smoking, booze, indulging at looking at porn, video games like 12 hours a day or something like that, well, that's very different. A very different lifestyle with a very different outcome. there is a roughness involved, there is dealing with frustration, discipline. You will have moments to celebrate your achievements where you enjoy, where you will enjoy.
At the top of the mountain.
Yeah.
Well, so the enjoyment at the top of the mountain, as Nietzsche pointed out, is tied into the struggle to get there in the first place, right? If Hercules had a helicopter in this painting and he could just ride to the top of the mountain, he would just be right next to himself. I mean, Kakia already has that path for him, right? Yeah, exactly. So there's joys you can only get to that are eternally significant and powerful that you can only get to by doing the rough path. And of course it has to be that way because of what you just said about self-development. Keep going, but I have something that's shouting to me about this painting. I'll talk about that after. So keep going.
I'll just show the next slide, which is a really brief 3 sentences, and then we can go back to the painting. So what happens is Hercules blocks Kakia. Hercules follows Arete and faces everything. He faces everything. He doesn't shirk away from nothing. He just develops his courage broadly, and Hercules becomes an Olympian god. He has a moment of apotheosis, and that's the gist of the story as relayed by Xenophanes in the mouth of Socrates.
So there's 2 things that are screaming at me here. One is there's this idea that's been developed of hyper stimulus. Well, you're talking about video games and porn and all of this stuff. The first thing to notice is that, so people say, okay, I have an endorphin release, a dopamine release, a pleasure release when I eat a piece of fruit because, fruit is going to give me the caloric information that I need to move forward in life. And so there's a reward system. I found some fruit, I ate it, and I got pleasure. But chocolate cake never existed when I evolved. And so chocolate cake is a hyper stimulus of the same thing. It's like hijacking that system that would lead me towards something good. And it's saying, hey, you could get so much of this that you can't even imagine. And it's overloading your brain, right? But you're going to get fat and lazy and uncomfortable and have a heart attack if you eat a lot of chocolate cake every day. Fine. That's the idea of hyperstimulus. So women are beautiful. You live in a culture. You might want to climb some mountains and do some hard work that you could maybe gain the attention of some of them and maybe start a relationship with one and stuff. That's good. That's great. But porn can just give you all that reward without any of that work. So it's a hyper stimulus. Okay, we got the idea. The first thing to notice is that's not new. That's how it's always been to be us. This story is about us. Mutato nomine, change but the name, and the story's about you. The painting was painted before there was an Xbox, before there was OnlyFans. You don't have anything new to struggle with that hasn't been what our ancestors have been struggling with since before we were painting these sorts of things, okay? These have always been the options. You can sit around and masturbate. You can sit around and look at fun plays and play with dice and cards and distract yourself from real accomplishment by having a video game type of accomplishment where you feel like you've conquered something very, very quickly and rapidly in a hyperstimulus. So we don't need a new story. We're in this story. We're already in this story. Quid rides? Quid rides mutato nomine. Why are you laughing? Change but the name, and the story is about you. Okay, that's the first thing. The second thing is this. Our culture's a mess. And part of the reason why we're trying to sort ourselves out as personal individuals who've come together to try to do this and share the journey while we're doing it. And part of the reason why we're approaching these texts and paintings is that our culture is in a messy, it's about to go off a cliff. And we want to turn the thing around. And we decided the first place to start is by taking responsibility for how messed up our own souls are. And they're pretty messed up. And as we sort things out, we find more layers. And it's like, okay, we got a lot of work to do. But here's one of the ways that our culture is messed up. And we noticed from the story we just finished that problems with femininity pretty much can be traced back to a problem with masculinity, right? Zeus has to take responsibility. Hera's got anxiety. She's a sadistic torturer. She's an anxious mess. But it's all because Zeus wasn't providing things properly for the harmony to exist. He
has been triggering her anxiety for eons.
It's his sin, and then other people are suffering. First his wife, and then our ancestors. Fine. So let's remind ourselves of that before I point out, because a lot of times what you see on the internet and on Twitter, it's like feminazi versus tradwife, right? People are looking at which Band-Aid is correct, and they're all fighting over something that isn't the source of the problem, okay? So I'm about to talk about one of the Band-Aid problems, because Zeus first gets rid of the anxiety issue of Hera, but then it just becomes a worse problem of explicit nastiness. All right, you're going to take away the one thing that makes me feel comfortable, which is all this anxiety to hold it together. Well, then I'm just going to be a bitch because fuck you. You weren't acting appropriately, and you have to still repent of that. So the story isn't solved until he does that. But one of the Band-Aid symptoms of our culture that's a mess that we might talk about and maybe try to unwind a bit here is the feminist movement. Here's how the feminist movement sees something like this. How come Hercules isn't the woman? Not noticing that 2/3 of the figures that make up the heavy portion of this are feminine. What's driving the culture is all feminine.
Yeah.
From the start, the feminine is superior to the masculine. The masculine exists in service to the feminine, not in a slave relationship where when the masculine tries to dominate the feminine, it's hell. And when the feminine is making a weak version of the masculine, that's kakia, right? So we're not saying that that's proper, but the feminine principle, it's like, why would you want to lower yourselves, ladies, to be the guy that does the thing when you can be when you can be the reason why the guy does the thing?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so women are so much more dominant in the story that Hercules has two options. He can be completely reduced by the fake thing that isn't the real thing, the porn thing, the OnlyFans thing, because he can be completely focused toward kakia, or he can do what he ought to do and actually make the world a better place. But either way, he's motivated by the feminine. So what the feminists are getting wrong, and it comes out in the fact that they're clearly anti-masculine and anti-feminine. They hate being women. The problem with the feminine is they're abortive. They're anti what made them honorable and what made them significant, what made them rightly the thing that the masculine is always serving and chasing. Okay,
maybe misanthropic, but portraying themselves as misandric. They think
both.
They think that they are misandric, but they are misanthropic. They went full throttle.
They're misogynistic. Also, they're anti-woman. Yeah. Right? They're anti-woman and anti-man. They're right. So they're misogynistic and misanthropic because the whole dance, they hate all of being. Why? Because it's out of order. Probably because we should trace it back to the error of the masculine, right? The masculine is the thing that needs to repent in the story that we just read. So probably that's the ultimate source of it. But let's at least point out that this isn't the solution. The solution to the problem, when we find the source of the problem and we fix it, that's the right solution. But let's notice that this Band-Aid thing is not the solution. Wishing that the story was you could be Hercules, when that's a lesser place to be than the reason why Hercules gets off his boulder, right? That's clearly superior in all of the profound ways that it could be. I mean, it's profoundly more superior. So anyway, I just want to point out that the painting is telling us all of these things, and they're all relevant to us because this is the story we're still in. Anyway, I don't know. How does that strike you?
Thanks, man. I really wanted to take the opportunity to show you this painting and so show you my interpretation of it. And I knew you would find value in it and to discuss it.
It's so good. You showed it to me the other day. We could look at this for 8 more hours. Like you could, honestly, we could. It's so amazing to me that when
I don't know what Arete is holding on her left arm. She's holding something.
It's like the first thing it's suggestive of is Moses, right? Bringing down the 10 Commandments thing. I'm not saying that's what it is. Clearly.
Yeah, maybe kind of like a rule tablet or something.
I didn't talk about this enough, so I'm not saying that's what it is. But one of the Jungian keys that we want to talk about is looking at the symbol. What does the symbol say about itself and what does it suggest, and starting there to interpret it, right? So it's the Jungian key versus the, for Freud, sometimes a cigar is just a cigar. For Jung, a cigar is always something more than a cigar, right? A cigar is always something that, like the Cupid has arrows for a reason. They're sharp for a reason. So look at the symbol to see what it is. So first of all, it seems like law. It seems like something official. We could imagine it's other things, and I don't know what it is, but that's the first way the symbol speaks. And so it's like, okay, how are you going to climb this mountain and get to this high height and have these great real victories that make everything better, not just you feeling good, but the whole world is made better by that? Well, you might need to start as a camel before you become a lion, before you become the child, right? It's like you can't just be a child and dance up the mountain, right?
He literally becomes the lion because of the lion skin.
Yeah, exactly. It's the
Zarathustra. He kills.
So it's closer to where he is already. So the artist has depicted this legal thing as like, okay, the first step is to become a camel, kneeling down to be well laden. See how much of a burden you can take to walk into your desert, to walk into your cliff, to walk into the place where it's hardest to carry things. Get the biggest burden you can. That's the first thing. But Zarathustra's idea is, that's the first step, the transformation of lazy dude on a boulder into camel that has accepted that. But then when you're on the mountaintop, you're not a camel. You're the child. You're dancing. You're pronouncing the sacred yes saying. It's like, I've conquered everything, so now everything is good to me. It's like God makes the world. He speaks order into being, but then he pronounces it exceedingly good. That's a yes saying, that life is good. And I got to the place where I have the right and the capacity to say yes to life because I made it better. I made it actually good. And so I'm not just delusional when I say it's good. I'm not just distracting myself with video games and porn and all the other worldly pleasure stuff that Kakia is tempting him with. It actually is good, and it can be said to be good in a way that actually triumphs over nihilism. But the path requires first that you long to be well laden. And then in that rough journey, you slay the lion. Well, the lion slays the dragon in Zarathustra's language. But the idea is that things are going to get rough, and having rules is not enough. You have to sort of say, to hell with rules, something new has to be established here. And so I have to push back against things and conquer something. That's what Hercules does. But then that's not the place to stay either. When you're at the top, then you're the dancing child, the innocent one that says yes to things. Anyway, so that's the first thing. It's closer to the beginning of the journey. It's over near where he is. It's like that's the first thing you'd have to accept to start that journey. It doesn't say sit here and let this thing be smashed on top of your head and just stay there obediently obeying the doctrines and that's all you have to do. It's saying this is your ticket to ride the journey, right? This is how you start the path. Well, you can't imagine him climbing the path using that as his walking stick or using it to break things. Like, it's not the whole journey. It's the start of the journey. And it's an unignorable start. You can't get around it. You can't say, oh, I'm just going to be a child dancing up the mountain. Fuck that. You've got to start with wanting to be well laden. You need to want the hardest path possible.
12 labors. 12 labors, man. One of them was clearing the manure out of a stable. So not all of them were like glorious killings of a mythological beast.
Good. So look, the light in this story is clearly coming from Kakia and Arate. Okay, I want to say this again. The feminine doesn't require the adoption of 12 labors. The reason why you're already a higher principle is that nature has already given you the labor. Risking death by torture to bring life into the world has already placed you, if you're willing to be the brave feminine and accept that like Mary does and say, let it be done to me. And yes, I say yes to life. And we were going to push this thing forward. If you're willing to do that, the masculine responds with, okay, what can I do to serve this thing? Because this thing is, I can't even imagine. And so, go climb a mountain and slay a lion and a dragon and do it. Fine, of course. Absolutely. I'll go do all of that to make this place better for this thing that I'm already oriented towards and I see as beautiful, like an image of something more divine. We got to make this place heaven because there's angels living in it, right? There's angels here, so let's go do the hard work to make it more heavenly. Okay. And so it's so stupid. I don't mean that the people thinking this are stupid. It's a stupid trick to femininity to say, oh, you should despise the idea of being a baby factory. Ew, a man's going to dominate you and force you. It's like, no, the man is like, he can't believe what you're willing and capable of doing. You're already a hero by what you are. He's the one who has to be woken up by you to realize how serious life is and get his ass in gear, right? The feminine is lighting the way for him to say, oh my God, there's shit to care about more than just sitting here feeling good and jerking off to OnlyFans.
And look at what girls are, or women, by being the first person a young man or a young girl interacts with by virtue of being born out of a woman. The mother is by necessity their first teacher, and these two women are standing. They are looking down from above at Hercules like he's a baby almost, and the one on the left is like a good mother. She will put him on a path to victory, or a good mother, or a good wife, or an archetype of both, or a good sister. She will inspire him to go on a virtuous path that forgoes vices, and the other one is the diametrical opposite. He will accumulate vices throughout his life. He will amount to literally nothing.
It's the devouring mother. Yeah. Keep going.
Yeah, and behind him is a badass palm tree. Maybe not a yucca tree, but a palm tree for sure. A really tough, resilient tree. So it has the toughness. But in contrast, Hercules is not a tree. So he must get moving.
Okay, he has some toughness. What's going to happen to that toughness? It's going to get weak and it's going to get degraded.
Yeah.
Or it's going to develop into something a tree can't do, which is take that toughness, that thing he is in line with that tree, and develop it into something that can get somewhere, that can make the world a different place through the accomplishment.
He's gonna choose Arete, as we know from the story, and his toughness is like a raw ore. He's gonna get tempered by the fire of the toughness, like a furnace, like a and he's going to get refined and purified.
Yeah, and hey, that makes the world a better place.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
That's going to be a better place for him to be. It's going to be a hell of a better place for everybody around him to be. Right. Everything. That's how the world progresses. That's how habitable order is created. And we're just sort of like, we're brushstrokes in this painting, right? So we're comprehending this story, but like this story is everything, including human society and our consciousness and what that brings to being. So this is too amazing.
And to add to that, choose Kakia. If everyone chooses Kakia, we will have runaway inflation in economics wise. If we choose Arete, we will have a golden age of prosperity. And I think that sums it up. And as Frank Herbert said in Dune, we need the science of discontent. We need hardship to develop our psychic muscles. And Ashoka the Great said, more than a society where everything is easier, we need a society where everyone is tougher, where everyone is stronger.
It's brilliant. That's brilliant. I think we should end it on that note. Let's end it on that note. That's brilliant. And let's talk for a minute after this. So I'm going to end it here. Thank you. Thanks for joining. We'll see y'all soon.